Welcome back to Manners of the Salaf, the manners of the earliest Muslims in their personal relations or interpersonal dealings. We want to make a few stops in these mini chapters or sections of the book that are probably best summarized or classified as mannerisms related to the suppression of conflict, how to suppress conflict from arising or even working to mitigate it once it arrives. So the author, Hafidhahullah, he mentions that among the manners of the Salaf is that they were adamant about not listening to rumors and gossip being spread by people about people, essentially. And so he mentions, for instance, this incident from Sufyan ibn Hussein, rahimahullah, who says, I was once sitting in the presence of Iyas ibn Muawiyah, rahimahullah, and with him was a man. So Iyas ibn Muawiyah is like leading the gathering, if you will, and with him was a man that Sufyan ibn Hussein is saying, I was afraid of this man, that if I were to get up and leave, he would mention me negatively. He'd speak bad about me to this scholar, Iyas ibn Muawiyah. He says, so I stayed for the duration of the gathering. Even though I wanted to go, I was too risky to go, so I stayed. And then once he left first, you guys know this when we take each other on the side and say stuff? When he left first, I went up to Iyas ibn Muawiyah, this scholar, and I mentioned this to him. And so I said to him, listen, this guy, man, he looks like he's up to no good, and like I don't trust him, and this sort of thing. He's suspicious, he's suspect. And so Iyas ibn Muawiyah, rahimahullah, how did he check him? He said to him, he didn't say to me anything until I finished. He let me finish saying what I had to say. He didn't interrupt me, but then he said, أَغَزَوْتَ الدَّيْلَمِ, did you fight against Ad-Daylam? Were you part of the Muslim army that liberated the lands of Ad-Daylam? I said to him, no. He said, فَغَزَوْتَ السِّنْد, were you part of the battle campaign against Sind? You know, India and Sind, right? So he said, I said, no. He said, فَغَزَوْتَ الْهِنْد, what about India? Were you part of that army? Did you go to war against India? I said, no. He said, فَغَزَوْتَ الرُّوم, did you ever go to war against the Romans, the Byzantines? I said no. He said to me that Ad-Daylam and Sind and Al-Hind and the Romans were all spared your wrath, and your Muslim brother is not spared of your wrath. Ouch. Like you're a tough guy only with the Muslims? This is your brother. Leave it alone, cut it out. So he says, فَلَمْ يَعُدْ سُفْيَانْ إِلَى ذَلِكَ. The narrator Sufyan made a commitment to himself to never partake in that behavior again, to act on or speak of suspicions. And Ibn Asakir, rahimahullah, he narrates from Sufyan. This is Sufyan al-Thawri, the famous Sufyan, rahimahullah. He said, a man once came and said to Sufyan al-Thawri, this imam, leading imam of the Tabi'een, مَا تَقُولُ فِي شَتْمِ مُعَاوِيَةٍ. What do you say, what is your opinion on cursing at or swearing at Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, the companion of the Prophet ﷺ, who got into that conflict with Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, may Allah be pleased with them all, right? So, of course, the people that were not as piously restrained on the lower levels of piety in society, of course they were hurling insults and accusations and gossip at these two leaders, both sides, right? And so Sufyan here is asked, do you consider it permissible to curse Muawiyah? Considering what he's done and what it has caused, and that's what he's trying to tell him, right? Would it be justified to curse Muawiyah? And so he said to him, مَتَى عَهْدُكَ بِشَيَتِيمَةِ فِرْعَوْنَ. When was the last time you cursed Fir'aun? I know, I said in the khutbah today that the Quran sort of mentions the doom of Fir'aun, but that's Quranic, outside of Quran, right? When do you just sit there and say, God damn Pharaoh, right? He was so brutal. when was the last time, he said to him, that you've cursed out Fir'aun? So the man said back to Sufyan, ما خطر ببالي. It never really crossed my mind. I don't know who does that. He said to him, فَفِرْعَوْنَ أَوْلَى بِالشَّتْمِ. You should be cursing Fir'aun before Muawiyah. He's not saying it's permissible to curse Muawiyah, radiallahu an. He's saying, why wouldn't you think of Fir'aun first? How could you think of Muawiyah atop the list of those that you want to get an edict, a fatwa on its permissibility? And a man once said to Wahb ibn Munabbih, rahimahullah, Inna fulanan shatamak. So and so is cursing you out. And so he said to him, Ama wajada shaytanu baridan ghayrak. Hasn't shaitan found a postal worker other than you? You're the guy who sort of delivers shaitan's mail. Shaitan is using you as the gossiper between people. And this is just wisdom in general. We are required religiously to abide by this issue. But even wisdom, when gossipers come your way and you don't stop them dead in their tracks, whoever you allow to tell you about others will tell of you to others. Right? Man qala lak qala ank. That's what the Arabs used to say. Whoever says to you will say about you. And so it is in everyone's best interest to silence gossipers. And Ibn Hajar al-Haytami rahimahullah, he says, and getting accustomed to or allowing for the normalization of, like to standardize shutting down gossipers, this is the only way to preserve friendship in any society. He says because this is one of the works of shaitan, that he does not overnight but over time put wedges in relationships through, and so these people are the army of shaitan whether they realize it or not. So the Wahb ibn Munabbih is calling him the postal worker of the shaitan, and Al-Haytami rahimahullah here is saying these are the foot soldiers of shaitan because they say something that bothers a friend with his friend, causes a little bit of friction. And that continues to grow and grow and grow. Shaitan continues to widen that gap once you've gotten the wedge in until division and sort of boycotting of one another becomes inevitable. So that's the first one. They don't listen to gossipers and they shut them down to suppress conflict. Another element of the Salaf, he mentions, he says, يَلْتَمِسُونَ الْأَعْذَارِ وَيَقْبَلُونَ الْإِعْتِذَارِ وَلَا يَفْتَحُونَ الْبَابِ لِأَهْلِ الضَّلَالِ. That they seek out to excuse people. The people that have flaws or have mistakes or have misbehaved or whatnot, they seek to excuse them and they are ready to accept their apologies and they don't open the doors for troublemakers. Ibn Abdul Barr rahimahullah, the famous Maliki scholar, he narrates in his book Buhjatul Majalis that Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu an, the companion, he said, لا يحل لامرئ مسلم يسمع من أخيه كلمة يظن بها سوءا وهو يجد لها في شيء من الخير مخرجا. It is not lawful, meaning it is sinful, it is haram, for a Muslim to hear a word, a statement from his brother, and to assume the worst of it when he can understand it in a more charitable way. You got to find a more charitable way to understand it and exhaust yourself in that before you interpret it in the most unfavorable light. And Ibn Sirin, rahimahullah, of the Tabi'een, he used to say, يَحْتَمِلُ الرَّجُلُ لِأَخِيهِ إِلَى سَبْعِينَ زَلَّةً. A person should tolerate up to 70 mistakes from his brother, meaning against him. وَيَطْلُبُ لَهُ الْمَعَاذِيرَ. And seek to generate excuses for him. Maybe he has a bad day, maybe he didn't intend it, right? Maybe they're going through a hard time. Maybe I misheard. Just continue to generate up to 70 excuses for them. He says, فَإِنْ أَعْنَاهُ ذَلِكَ. And if that reaches a dead end, I can't find any more excuses. This one's pretty obvious, or this one's pretty intolerable. He says, he should say, لَعَلَّ لِأَخِي عُذْرًا غَابَ عَنِّي. Maybe my brother has an excuse I don't know. In other words, don't even tell yourself, okay, I'm going to excuse them if I can figure out what their excuse is. No, no, no. Maybe they have an excuse that I don't know. And Abdullah ibn Zayd Abu Qulaba, the famous Abu Qulaba rahimahullah, he famously said, when something reaches you about your brother that you dislike, that you detest, then seek out for them an excuse with all your might. And if you cannot find an excuse for them, then just say to yourself, لَعَلَّ لِأَخِي عُذْرًا لَا أَعْلَمْ. Maybe my brother has an excuse that I am not aware of. And Al-Hasan ibn Ali, radiyallahu an, the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib, may Allah be pleased with them all, he said, لَوْ أَنَّ رَجُلًا شَتَمَنِي فِي أُذُنِ هَذِهِ وَاعْتَذَرَ فِي أُذُنِ الْأُخْرَى لَقَبِلْتُ عُذْرَهُ. If a person were to curse me out here, and then apologize here, meaning no time at all, like right away, he just took one step and then he turned back and he apologized, I would accept it from him. You know, there was a beautiful narration from Imam Ahmad rahimahullah that one of the followers of the Hanafi madhab, and this is not sort of anything, a pejorative against the Hanafi madhab at all, because the higher you go up among the scholars, the higher you go up amongst the adab. But at times there are people that have this identity-centric religiosity. They're not scholars, but they identify with the scholar. They get toxic faster, yes? So one of these people, he heard Imam Ahmad say something as they were walking together, rahimahullah, and he said, but Abu Hanifa doesn't say this. So Imam Ahmad, rahimahullah, kind of just lifted his hands, like, all right, like, with all the respect, like, what do you want me to do? I believe the hadith means this, or says that. You're saying Abu Hanifa, like, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to put down what I understand the Messenger of Allah to have intended? Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So that's what he did. He kind of just flipped his hands nonchalantly. And so the man understood that he was sort of putting down Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, when he certainly was not. And so he said to him, لَبَوْلُ أَبِي حَنِيفَ خَيْرٌ مِّن مِلْءِ الْأَرْضِ مِنْكَ. That the urine of Abu Hanifa is superior to an earth's load of you. And he walked away. Then he felt bad about it and he came back the next day and said, Shaykh, I'm really sorry. I overreacted, I messed up, I apologize. And so Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, and these people were honest, he's not just saying this, right? When he says what he's about to say, he said, Wallahi, I did not lift my foot before having apologized to you. Before I took my next step, I said, it's all right, you know, young guy, young hothead, they'll get over it, right? Before I lifted my foot another time in that walk yesterday, I had already forgiven you. And it's reported that the Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah, these are just, I guess, coming to mind now, a man came to him as he was sick, and he said to him, قَوَّ اللَّهُ ضَعْفَكَ. May Allah strengthen your weakness. And so, you know, Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah was like a master grammarian. They used to ask people like, is Imam al-Shafi'i good at Arabic? And they used to say, كَلَامُ الشَّافِعِيِّ حُجَّةً. That the everyday speech of a Shafi'i was a reference point. Like, he doesn't slip in Arabic. So grammar was very important to him, to keep the Arabic pure, the Quranic Arabic pure. So when he heard the guy say in his sickness, may Allah strengthen your weakness, he said to him, that's actually not how you're supposed to say it. It's actually supposed to be, قَوَّ اللَّهُ قُوَّتَكَ وَأَضْعَفَ اللَّهُ ضَعْفَكَ. May Allah strengthen your strength and weaken your weakness. You don't say, may Allah strengthen your weakness, because that technically means intensify your weakness. And if He intensifies my weakness, لَقَتَلَنِي, I'll be dead. So the guy got very scared. Like, oh man, did he think I was sort of being passive aggressive and indirectly making dua against him? And so the guy's like, Imam, I didn't mean that. I only meant well. مَا أَرَدْتُ إِلَّا الْخَيْرِ. So Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah said to him, relax. أعلم أنك لو سببتني ما أردت إلى الخير. I know that even if you were to curse me out openly and deliberately, you only meant well. That's not reflective of who you actually are. Maybe you thought I was an enemy to the deen, and so you felt like it was your duty to that sort of thing. Beautiful hearts. May Allah beautify our hearts and yours. And Ibn Abi Dunya rahimahullah, he narrates from Ibn Aoun that he said, اعتذر رجل عند إبراهيم. A man apologized once in the presence of Ibrahim, meaning Ibrahim al-Nakha'i. So for all of you guys that are studying, If you ever see Abdullah in the Sahaba, who is it? It's Ibn Mas'ud. Unqualified is Ibn Mas'ud. And if you ever find Sufyan unqualified in the Tabi'een, it's who? Al-Thawri. Otherwise, it's Ibn Uyayna, but it's Al-Thawri. And if it's Ibrahim, who is it? The famous Ibrahim An-Nakha'i. Right? Rahimahullah. Rahimahumullahu jami'an. So, a man apologized to Ibrahim. And he said to him, قَدْ عَذَرْنَاكَ غَيْرَ مُعْتَذِرٍ. We had already excused you before you asked to be excused, meaning before you apologized. إِنَّ الْإِعْتِذَارَ يُخَالِطُهُ كَذِبٍ. Because apologies usually involve lots of dishonesty. Like, I'm not the type that waits for people to apologize, because even when they do apologize, it's like saving face a lot of times, or exaggerative a lot of times, and I don't want to put my brother through that. I don't want to force him into a situation where he has to be dishonest. Dr. Muhammad Ismail al-Muqaddim, hafidhahullah, is a contemporary scholar and psychiatrist in Alexandria, Egypt. I've been to his office twice. He has this sign in front of his door, or on top of his door on the inside, that says two things that always involve lying. شدة الاعتذار وكثرة المواعيد. Intense apology. I'm so sorry. No, you're not. You're not that sorry. If I told you give me $10, I'll forgive you. You wouldn't give me the $10, man. You're not that sorry. So sorry. And كثرة المواعيد. Too many appointments. You could call it optimism bias as much as you want. At the end of the day, you know that you actually can't be that punctual that often. So stop giving out so many appointments. This next subsection of suppressing conflict and drama and what could lead to it, he says, لا يفتشون عن معايب بيوتهم ويعفون ويتغافلون عن زلات الناس. That they do not seek out the flaws or the imperfections or whatever is inadequate within their homes. Meaning with family. They're extra easygoing with family. They don't seek out the flaws of their homes, and they pardon and overlook people for their mistakes. Now we're not even talking about apologies anymore or excuses. They just overlook it as if they didn't see it to begin with. And this is particularly important in what interpersonal relationship? Between spouses, right? Because there's so much entanglement. Square footage wise, you're always together. You're locked behind closed doors more than anyone else, right? And also, circumstances. Like we're both opining on this life decision and that life decision. This, view on the kids' ideal path forward, or how to deal with this or deal with that. So there's so much involvement that you have to create a bigger buffer, or else the warmth of the relationship falls through or falls apart. And that is why he begins here actually with the fact that in the famous hadith of Zara, it's a beautiful hadith, almost impossible to unpack in English without like an hour and a half at least. It's a long hadith that Aisha radiallahu anha narrates to the Prophet ﷺ about 10 or 12 women that are bragging of their husbands to each other pre-Islam. All right? And so he mentions that in the famous hadith of Zara, the fifth woman famously said, زوجي إن دخل فهد وإن خرج أسد ولا يسأل عما عهد. That my husband, when he enters, fahid. You guys know what fahid means? What's a fahd? Lion. She said, and when he goes out, asid. He becomes an asad. What's asad? Lion. But there's a difference between a fahid and an asad. Fahid. Anyone know? You got it? They're both lions, but sort of, yeah. There's over 100 words for Arabic for lion in the Arabic language. Okay, I heard there's something like 110. I don't know them obviously, but I hear this from linguists. Every single one of them calls your attention to a certain dimension of the lion or his personality or something like this, right? So when Asad, think of Sayyid. Asad is like the king of the jungle. Whereas Fahid often they'll say like fahd, like shibl, like a cub, right? But fahd also from like docility, being docile, just stand, because the lioness is the one that hunts, and then he wakes up and he goes and eats first, and that sort of thing, right? That's known about the big lion. So she's saying he's like that. My husband, when he comes home, he's very chill. When he goes outside, he's a man, right? But he's not like that here, inside. And then she explains, she says, لا يسأل عما عهد. He does not ask, he doesn't run interrogations at home about what he left behind. He doesn't ask like what happened to those few dollars here or that meal there, or he doesn't ask about these things. In general, these are qualities of the stingy, qualities of the greedy, and those are of the worst qualities for a husband. Right? The two worst qualities, Al-Ghazali rahimahullah says, for a husband are what? Come on, man, pass this test. The sisters are listening. Stinginess and aggressiveness. When he goes outside, he's an asset. He's not an asset inside, right? And he says this is something that you actually notice across societies, like Arab, non-Arab. He goes, you kind of see that there's somewhat of a worldwide consensus on this. And the two most detested qualities, he said, in a wife are what? Sisters, tell us. Huh? Okay, argumentative, and what else? Huh? What did she say? Bossy. Yes. He said al-waqahatu wa tasallut. That tasallut is when sort of she's overbearing, and like if I wanted to marry, another man, I'd sort of marry someone with a mustache. Like that's not what I'm here for, right? I don't want to feel like I'm always contending. And so her strength is in her sort of her passive strength, they call it, right? You have to know his keys. When he's coming like a freight train, don't crash with the freight train. Just so long as you change the rails, you know how to divert him this way and that way, then you're actually driving, not him, right? But the clashing, Al-Ghazali is saying, rahimahullah, cross societies, men cannot stand this quality by and large. And the other quality was that of waqaha. Waqaha, he means by that shamelessness, meaning for her to be comfortable with other men. Those are the two qualities almost all men across human civilizations can't stand. Anyway, so stinginess is a part of this, that you're checking on like, hey, what's going on in the house? I have a teacher actually who said this sister came to him. She was insisting that she had to get a divorce because she was possessed by a jinn, and the jinn was saying he's going to kill her or kill her children or something like this if she does not let go of this man, because he's in love with her, the jinn, and some craziness like that. So they kept probing and probing and probing, like, no, something's off here. This lady has no symptoms of being possessed by jinn. And I'm not fielding any questions on jinn after this talk, because that always happens. So they said we kept probing and probing and probing. She actually made up the whole story because she could not stand her husband, because her husband was extremely stingy. He used to, before he left the house, put a marker on the keg of oil, of cooking oil, on where it was to know how much it decreased. So the poor lady needed an out. She deserved an out, to be honest. May Allah rectify all of our homes. But this is the idea, that she's saying, my husband, he comes home, he's peaceful, docile, right? Not aggressive. And he doesn't show signs of stinginess, not always questioning things. And when he goes outside, that's where he exerts, his agency. Allah praised the Prophet ﷺ himself for this quality in the Quran. When he said in the beginning of Surah Tahrim, that when he discovered certain things that were inappropriate, فَعَرَّفَ بَعْضَهُ, he sallallahu alayhi wasallam identified some of it to his wives. This is unacceptable. وَأَعْرَضَ عَنْ بَعْض, and he overlooked some of it. And this is how you preserve a relationship. Two-way street, men and women, right? Some psychiatrists, they tell you, even with your kids, you want to try to have a little bit of a count, that there's 5 good interactions, pleasant, for every 1 stressful interaction. Otherwise, if it's always, checking each other and on top of each other, the relationships cannot be functional or healthy in this way at all. And the wise of old used to say, "Man al-aqil huwa al-hakim al-mutaghafil." The intelligent person is the wise man who knows how to overlook things, or woman, of course. And it was said to Al-Imam Ahmad rahimahullah that afiyah is 10 parts, like living a good life, enjoying life, right? Is 10 parts, like if you split it into 10 equal parts, 10 of them are found in taghaful, learning to live and let live and be easygoing and overlook and just, pick your battles and skip this one for the next one, then skip it again and a third time, at-taghaful. So Imam Ahmad was asked, what do you think of this? That 90% of the goodly life on earth is found in at-taghaful. And so he said, al-afiyatu ashratu ajza kulluha fi at-taghaful. He said, I'll agree with the first half, but it's all about this, meaning there's hardly anything else. Picking your battles and not battling often and not being contentious, and this is what it's all about. And so, obviously we are not talking about overlooking things that are haram, that you can better the situation. But the fact is, you can't better most situations like this, and so you got to pick your battles. And of course, if we're talking about something that are personality differences or circumstantial, slip-ups and stuff, that means there should be even greater accommodation or capacity for taghaful. Not haram, obviously. And Al-Fudayl ibn Iyad, rahimahullah, used to say, manliness is found in as-safhu an atharat al-ikhwan. Being able to forgive and turn a blind eye to the mistakes, actual mistakes of your brothers. Didn't check up on you, spoke to you in an inappropriate tone, to do this. And notice he said al-ikhwan. Al-ikhwan here is like their term for friends a lot of times. Because when you have a friendship, there's going to be more interaction, which means there's going to be more what? Friction. More likelihood of friction. And Amr ibn Uthman al-Makki rahimahullah, he would say, al-muru'atu at-taghafulu an zalal al-ikhwan. That muru'ah means manliness or to be chivalrous. Like they train the knight to have chivalry, to be reverent and, they call it gallantry or chivalryness or chivalrousness. This is al-muru'ah. It comes from the word mar, which means man. And so essentially it is, the noble man is the one who knows how to overlook the slip-ups of others. There is a great scholar in Islamic history whose name was Hatim al-Asam. His name was Hatim, or he was known as Hatim al-Asam. Anyone know what al-Asam means? The deaf. He wasn't deaf. But there was a story that basically got around about him, that he was walking, perhaps the story came from the few that were around him in this moment, and an elderly woman stopped him for a question, an Islamic question. So as she was speaking, the woman accidentally passed wind. She passed gas. And so her face turned all the colors of the rainbow, obviously, right? She got all, discombobulated and embarrassed about it. And so what did he do? He immediately, quick on his feet, he said, "What? Can you repeat your question? I'm hard of hearing. I can't hear you." To make her put her under the impression that I didn't hear what just happened. It's fine. You're good. And so it got out about him, and so the people used to lightheartedly say, and it stuck, Hatim al-Asam. Hatim, the non-hearing or the deaf. And Al-Fudayl ibn Iyad, rahimahullah, he used to also say, "Man talaba akhan bila aybin baqiya bila akh." Whoever is looking for a brother that doesn't have flaws will remain without any brothers. You're not going to find one. You need to be better at your discretion. And Uthman al-Khayyat, rahimahullah, says, I heard Dhunnun, famous Egyptian scholar, Dhunnun al-Misri, I heard Dhunnun saying, لا تثقفن بمحبة من لا يحبك إلا معصوما. Don't ever seek out being loved by someone that will only love you if you're flawless. Just lose hope. Go find somebody else. It's just a matter of time. This third section, he says that it was from the great manners of the Salaf that they would يَسْتُرُونَ عَوْرَاتَ النَّاسِ. They would actively conceal the people from being exposed. Conceal the people and cover up for them. And this is, of course, of the qualities of Allah Himself, subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِنَّ اللَّهَ حَلِيمٌ سِتِّيرٌ. And one narration, he said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, إِنَّ اللَّهَ حَلِيمٌ حَيِيٌّ سِتِّيرٌ. Allah is Halim, that means He's forbearing. He tolerates so much, more than we ever would or could combine. And then He is Hayy, meaning He has a sense of shame. Of course, in a manner befitting His majesty. He is Hayy. And He is Sittir from Sitr. It means He is concealing. He loves to conceal all the time. Yuhibbul haya'a wa sitr. And He loves that others also involve themselves in the practice of haya and sitr. To be people that have honest shame, healthy shame, and also this sitr, this concealment of others. He said, فَإِذَا اغْتَسَلَ أَحَدُكُمْ فَلْيَسْتَتِرْ. And so when one of you is bathing, let them not bathe openly. Let them not bathe. Instead, they should conceal themselves while they're bathing. That's one of the forms. So conceal yourself, but also conceal others. And the Prophet ﷺ promised, come. مَنْ سَتَرَ مُسْلِمًا سَتَرَهُ اللَّهُ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ. As we discussed today in the khutbah about the repayment coming always in a perfectly suitable way. Whomever conceals a Muslim, Allah conceals them in this world and in the next. And of course, there's two categories of people. The people who their flaws are unknown, right? And then you come to discover their flaws. I mean actual sins even. You are not allowed to expose them. You are to help them and encourage them to even conceal themselves. Where do we get this from? Why do we say it's haram to expose them? Because this was the behavior of the Prophet ﷺ. When the man came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, zanait, right? I fornicated. The Prophet ﷺ said to him what? فَلَعَلَّكَ قَبَّلْتَ. Maybe you mean you kissed her. Like